Welcome to Bubbler.
Well, hello and welcome to Bubbler Podcast. Bubbler Podcast is committed to providing water cooler conversations to make you the life of the break room and the office party. Kerri, we've got a little bonus in here. We were recording our first episode of the Let's Go to the Mall series. And when we were talking about some of the old concepts, one of them, which just got a rise out of you, and we found out you worked at a mall, which is weird that I didn't come up before then. The other is you had such a violent reaction to Thom McAn shoes. What age, what stores, just one job? How many times did you work in the mall? And what gave you that terrible feeling about the Thom McAn retail store?
Well, Thom McAn, like I said, going to the mall for me, it was all about shopping, and we were there to do business. We were there to spend money, back to school, which is a perfect time of year to talk about this story. For me, as a kid, you got 5 outfits. You went to Sears. You got the color guide, right? And you got to pick the red, the blue, and the yellow outfit. And then you went to Thom McAn and bought the brown shoes. They were hideous. They were just awful. Every time we would go to Thom McAn, I had to pick the most sensible. Like I said previously, they would take out the foot measuring tool, and there would be much discussion on what size I would be wearing that year. I hate Thom McAn. I still hate Thom McAn. And I would go out of my way when I worked at the mall, as I said, to avoid Thom McAn. But I worked for many, many years for CVS Pharmacy. And I don't know if you remember, but if you ever went to the mall and you had a headache, most malls didn't have anywhere to, like, there was no pharmacy. Like, you could get a card, but like if you needed something or you wanted a bottle of water, it wasn't like it is today where we're extremely
Yeah,
hydrated.
they didn't have like bodegas or little.
No.
I have seen some malls that have had little drugstores in them and usually it was the type of drugstore that maybe also had a little candy or ice cream counter. Those were very few and far
Rare.
between.
Yeah. So in the outdoor mall that I talked about at the last episode, there was a CVS and it was near the movie theater. And back then you would have to sneak in all your snacks. And so people would come to CVS and raid the candy aisle. Then they'd stuff their pockets with the candy and go into the movie theater. I worked at that CVS in the outdoor mall for many years. And then they redid the original 80s mall that I hung out in, and we opened another CVS over there. Subsequently, as you know, the mall, that one of the malls no longer existed, and they redid the mall. And then I worked in the regular mall, not the outdoor mall. That was very complicated. It's not as complicated as I made it sound. I spent a lot of time, Christmas time, people would come and get their wrapping paper and all that. So it got extremely crazy and busy. But the most interesting part of the mall to me was the characters. If you only went to the mall to hang out with your friends, you went frequently. So you may have learned the cast of characters of the mall. You always had the security guard.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, working at the mall, it was always the same people. You had the security guard, you had the wherever you were getting your lunch. So you always had a couple of people who were lifelong cooks, the kiosk person who was always late and never stayed at their kiosk. That was a fun one. They would come into your store because the kiosk outside of your store wasn't being manned.
The kiosk person, if I recall, there was typically 2 types of kiosk people. The girl typically was the girl that really didn't want to work. So she found the one that she picked the job that she could just sit around and chat with her friends because we didn't have cell phones back then. Actually, typically the kiosk girls were pretty attractive.
Uh-huh.
So there was always like the pretty kiosk girl who really didn't want to work and was constantly being hit on by the guys that worked there and the shoppers.
Uh-huh.
And then you had skeezy kiosk guy who was there to get laid and thought he was the stud of them all and was usually the skeeziest and the slimiest and the least pleasant. Those are the guys that usually ended up becoming used car salesmen.
No, they were the shoe salesmen.
Oh, they graduated to shoe
Yes,
salesmen.
they graduated to the shoe salesmen.
Okay. So it's funny is I didn't know where you were going with the characters of the mall So I'm like thinking, you're talking about mascots. So I'm like, she's going to talk about Buster Brown or some shit like that. I didn't
No.
realize you were giving me your own pre
Castagnetti.
Kevin Smith Mallrats film
Yes.
experience. And it's funny, you could do that because I absolutely could do the same thing from managing in high school a skateboard shop.
Mhm.
It was the same thing. You had certain characters, the moms, the wannabes, whatever. Where the mall, you had a much grander stage with the security guards. So you had the behind the scenes, you had the actors, the troublemakers, the regular customers who were still being dropped off at the mall by their spouses or girlfriends because they had lost their driver's license within a year
Correct.
of getting it from
So,
racing, speeding,
yes,
driving drunk, kind of the Matthew McConaughey's of Dazed and Confused. I'm sure
yes.
you had some of that cast there.
I did. So here's something interesting. So I mentioned, if you remember, when there were no, said bodega, which is a perfect example. There wasn't a lot of that. Like when you go into a mall now, if you want something to drink, you can find a vending machine or something like that. We just didn't have that. And so most of the pharmacies that were in malls, we didn't have a pharmacy. So like CVS pharmacy didn't have a pharmacy in the mall. I worked in one that actually had a pharmacy. So you add a layer of a cast of character that is actually going to the mall to get their prescription medication. Just
Nice. That's a subsect, a very scary subsect. And I would imagine like you would probably only see kids that were being dragged there by their parents or grandparents as consumers. So you had, I mentioned Kevin Smith earlier. You like were in Mallrats if they then put Clerks inside the mall.
correct. Yes, it was very different, and it was definitely a unique experience for sure.
The episode talks a lot about the mall's role in dating.
Mhm.
Did you ever get like the
Um,
guy who thought his date was
yeah.
going well and he came into the mall to purchase a condom?
Yes, that
Nice.
you went exactly where I thought you were gonna go. Actually, I thought you were going to try and get me to give you info on my dating at that time, which also could have been entertaining, but that was the other thing too. Don't forget the outside mall, if you remember, I said, was attached to our movie theater. So, there was a lot of people leaving thinking they were gonna go, get lucky, and they would stop at our pharmacy before they went on their merry way.
Now, did you
So
guys sell liquor?
no,
Okay.
no.
I assume not, but that would have been a whole nother
I
thing
can't
as well.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they opened the new store in the new mall, I'm using quotation air quotes here, in the new mall, they did not have a pharmacy. So, I don't think at this point, if there were any, and I don't know that there's a single one left in a mall, I have no idea. I don't think any of them had pharmacies in them.
I went to Vegas for Christmas a couple years ago, and the Planet Hollywood Hotel, I was staying at the Cosmo, and you walked across the street to the Planet Hollywood Hotel, and in
Uh-huh.
their courtyard, they had a CVS. I would imagine some of those Northeast malls that have Targets in them
Oh, have a
uh,
CVS in the
might
Target.
have a
Yeah.
CVS in
Yeah,
them
that's
as
true.
well. But that is definitely not a common occurrence with the new outdoor malls where they've also integrated the restaurants and the living condos and hotels. And there's really some cool stuff. And we'll talk about that later. Those tend to have a major pharmacy across the street, the adjacent, less expensive
Well, yeah,
real
I mean,
estate.
if you have real estate and they are starting to do that where they're building, apartments and condos and stuff, I could see that because you do need to have
But it's
and
still across the street, so it's not in that prime
right.
real estate, but
Yeah,
a
but
lot of those do have, like, a small bodega type store in them
yeah.
with, like, airport prices,
Yes, exactly,
stuff
like a
like
Hudson News or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's really what a CVS was if you saw one at a mall. It was more like, a Hudson News with some gift wrap and, that kind of stuff.
I love this little detour we've taken, and I can't think of a better way to close on it than, listen to your beautiful rant about your experience with Thom McAn. And
Sensible shoes for
here you go
80s
with
children.
sensible shoes for a not so sensible gal. All rise.
It's time for Mick Makes the Call.
You may be seated. All right, Kerri, court is in session. What do you have today?
All right, Mick. Do you think that kids today, 16-year-olds, should be getting their driver's licenses? Or do you think with the benefit of having Uber and Lyft and all the car services, do you think we should increase the age of which people should be getting their licenses?
You know, I work in New York where there are people that
Mhm.
never had a driver's license because why would they? They drive,
Right.
they do the subway and things like that. That's a big part of New York culture more than anywhere else. Chicago, not probably half as much of that. A lot of people don't even know LA has a subway and train system that could be very effective if anyone ever used it. There's two ways to look at it. Like if you're asking me, should the legal age of getting a driver's license be 16? Yeah, I don't think we should change that. I think anyone that is determined to do the work into passing the test and getting a driver's license, I think they should still be allowed to do so, especially if it's maybe someone has to start working at that age
Sure.
and whatever it is. But I don't think we should, as a government, say 16 is too immature or anything like that. There's so many other factors involved. And I know 16-year-olds that are more mature than I am today. Age is less of a factor, even more so today than before. Now, do I think that a parent should feel the pressure to purchase a car for their child at the age of 16 like there was in our generation? Absolutely not, because those other things are available. I don't think there should be a stigma on not having your own car, right? When you get your driver's license, I don't think the parents should feel like they suck for not buying a car. So I don't think there should be the focus on owning a car that there was back in our day. The kids that want to get the license, if they're responsible enough and their parents sign off on it, absolutely. Now, I think there are changes that should be made in adulting or parenting from that aspect, that if my kid wants to go out to a party, I don't think I would let them drive. I would tell them to take an Uber to and from the party.
So, kind of a follow-up question then, as a 16-year-old, Mick, would you be pushing to get your license, or would you, if you can get around with Uber, why bother?
First off, I just realized that a lot of people could react to what I just said about having my kid at 16 take an Uber to a party, because I don't know that putting your 16-year-old in a car with an adult you don't know. I got to think that part, maybe let them drive to the party and some of the kids take an Uber together to get
Well,
home.
there's Teen Uber now, and there
Okay.
are other options. So,
Okay.
yes, it
Let,
wasn't a bad idea. It was not a
let,
bad
let me
idea.
cover my ass a little bit on that one. I mean, my kids are grown, so I forgot
Yes.
about that. Well, I'm sorry. What was your follow-up?
So my follow-up is, as a 16-year-old Mick,
Oh, when I want to get my license.
would you do you think that you just wouldn't want to get a license now? Because we are seeing a lot of teenagers not get their licenses quickly as maybe our generation, because there are other alternatives. And I'll tell you what, if I had an Uber Teen account as they have them now, I might not have gotten my license as quickly as I did. I don't know.
This is going to be, well, I don't think it'll be insightful for you, but maybe insightful for anyone listening about Mick as a teen. Let me tell you, the only reason I could justify going to get my car at 16, especially in hindsight, is I did probably 50% of my making out in my car as a teenager. That is the only reason I can justify spending the money to have a car, is the fact that it was also a social hub. Not only making out too, but like when my friends and I were skateboarding, you'd open the doors, turn on your car stereo while you were skateboarding out in a parking lot or whatever. So solely for silly, selfish
Okay.
reasons, yes, I would still get my car. Plus, you could have your alcohol in it. All reasons that should,
We're drinking and driving. Okay.
so, well, yeah, to get home. So all the reasons that a 16-year-old should not have a car are the reasons that Mick would want a car. That is my verdict. I rule in favor of getting a car at age 16. All adjourned.